What's up, guys? So, trying to get back into the swing of things with making videos. I'll be trying to do this little overlay for a quick, overview for turbo compressor stuff. Um, I've been really into and very accurate in guessing the turbo matching for a lot of different applications, and not just rotary stuff or the recent case with the diesel truck, which I'll have a little story for that to join this video. Um, but I kind of want to give you guys another overview of how to read these. Why I personally don't like G45 series at all. I actually have a client coming up with this exact turbo. And then I'm going to give you kind of an A-B comparison. I'm not going to show the match plot for each right now, just because it's a little bit more work than I think this is going to be necessary to show you guys. But I will kind of overview this turbo and what I would choose for this car instead. So first off, before we get too deep into this, the comparison here is a G45 1500 versus a G42 1200 compact. Actually, no, we'll do the 1450 instead. So we'll have a 79 millimeter G42, we'll have a 76 millimeter G45. And one of the things that I'm going to try to relay in this video is that there's a compressor flow versus turbine flow ratio. And for a given engine application, there's a sweet spot between that, whether it's cam or overlap related, whether it's for rotary, it'd be like porting sizing. So when you change different port sizes to a rotary engine, that effectively will change the ideal balance for the compressor to turbine ratio. Because let's say for a semi-peripheral port, it's very sensitive to exhaust back pressure. So you must, at that point, you're going to negate a little bit of your torque by having a larger turbine wheel. There's still a sweet spot, not hit what I would call laziness factor. And on street cars, you can get away with a 2-to-1 EMAP to map ratio without a problem. And especially if you're doing that at 9,000 RPM, so you're only hitting that 2-to-1 for just a little tiny bit. But let's say that at 6,000, you're 1-to-1. The amount of time that you're spending under 6,000 is going to be pretty optimized, and you're spending from 6 to 8 is pretty optimized, and just right at red line is where you're having your pressure that's kind of on the edge of what's ideal. So I'm kind of in the opposite mindset of many people where they're like, oh, keep it 1-to-1. Well, that works for drag racing, but when you're not using launch control and you're not using 40 pounds of boost all the time, it really does make it a hell of a lot better driver to not be that 1-to-1 ratio of EMAP to MAP. So let's get this kicked off here. Imagine we've got a 2JZ, so think 3-liter motor. It's going to be running large injectors, going to be running pretty decent size, I would say a medium to large size cam. Still has VVTi, and it's going to be on flex fuel, which means in this case, in the realm of maybe 40 pounds boost. Okay, so what I want us to look at right here is on this screen, 4, that's a pressure ratio of 4. 3, okay, 3, let's just say we're at sea level. It's going to be like 29 pounds here, and right about 3.8 is going to be our, let's say 40 pounds. So if we go and we scan across here to this, let's see if the mouse shows up for you guys. Getting the mouse to show up. There we go. Okay. So let's say we're going right here. This turbo would start to be away from the surge line at roughly 80 pounds a minute of airflow. So That's a lot of surge. So you have to run much less boost, or you could be over on this side over here, surging your ass off until 80 minutes of air. And then it would continue going across. And I like taking this 68 percentile right here and dropping this down. So if we have 60, 65, 68. If we're at 3.8 right here, it's going to knock us to roughly 127. I had to draw a line straight down here. So we're saying from 80 to 127. Okay, that's that G45 1500. And we can kind of do that rough math of the 10-to-1 ratio, say that this is horsepower. Okay, that means that this turbo, because I think that the G series flows extremely well, I would just say that this is wheel horsepower. So the turbo doesn't get up to 40 psi effectively until 800 horsepower, wheels worth of effective air, and then it will carry out to about a 127, so 1270 horsepower. Now, by comparison, that same pressure ratio, take a look at this turbo. 3.75, 3.8. We're looking here, surge line is now going to be 65 to 70. Okay, so we're gaining way more turbo, 15 pounds a minute of air sooner. And then if we draw this line, here's our RPM lines. Okay, so let's say we're just to lightly overspin this and to keep it out to the 68% that we did from the last one. Well, if we take this line here, so this, not the 60, not the 65, but the 68, we continue drawing this shape into what would have been this curve out here, which is like one of these big ones over here. This would give us somewhere landing about here by overspinning the turbo, say maybe 15%. That would land us at 140-ish. So we're going from 65, 140 to 80 to 127. There's a lot of reasons why I'm picking these specific numbers and why I'm showing you guys this specific turbo comparison. The thing that I continue finding is that so many people that don't reach out and talk to me about, I need help with turbo selection, this and this and this, you'll get these really oddball setups like a EFR 8370 on a rotary engine that has a large port, let's say like a full bridge port. The bridge port is just blowing through the effective airflow of that a turbine wheel so quickly that after 6,000 RPM, when that bridge port should be taking off, the turbo's not choking. Okay. In this case, the G42 is the golden turbo of the G series, hands down. Okay. Especially this 79 millimeter. This has a huge effective power bandwidth. And this is even more so. So imagine we're at 29. So, or we can do, let's do like 34 pounds. Okay, that's where it's really, really, really sweet. That is now going to be about, let's just say 50, pulling out to 130. Extremely responsive. I'm going to get to the exhaust flow stuff in just a moment. And then we go back here, doing the same thing. Okay. This is now 70, going out to 123, 125. So you're getting so much more with the smaller turbo size. Now, this one is like completely mind blowing to me because this is where these G series really took off. The turbine wheel, the 9-blade turbine wheel is just able to eat. KC Turbos actually has a really good video in regards to different turbine blade count, how it affects performance, what they're doing for response and quietness and for noise profile, stuff like that. I want you guys to focus right here at the 77% efficiency of the G42 turbine wheel. Over here, 73 peak efficiency. I mean, if we're 4% is a lot, turbine wheels. Going from a GTX to a G series on average was like a 4 or 5% gain. And for a lot of people, that made a ton of difference when it came to when we're talking about compressor, the turbine wheel balance. Okay, so this is fully mapped out in regards to each size. Okay, so we've got our 7 options there. This one, they only mapped out one. But what you can do is interpolate this data. And what it ends up being, so in this case, we have, so if we went from a D4 128, which is what this car would have, somewhere around here, we're 54 pounds a minute. And then the next size down, 115 T4 would be right around 51. So we got a 3 pound a minute offset. Then we go down again to the next T4, and that's going to be 48. So again, it's about 3 pounds a minute offset by changing the AR ratio. Now, to me, it's not really big range, and a lot of these will be more efficient if we go down in size because we already have the turbine wheel to account for it. So what we might end up doing for this guy is he's on the 128, and if we find that it's just complete dog shit and I have some good ratio, which I'll compute and show you guys, we might be able to sneak by and just downsize the turbine side and get this a little bit better. But the compressor itself is where the weak link is. They're kind of doing like a class turbo sizing thing, and I'm not a huge fan. It's just one of those things where they made it a smaller compressor inducer, but the exducer's huge. Really doesn't seem to have an effectiveness for power bandwidth. So this one, for instance, this is a 1.01. This would be the smallest one here. This is 44 minute. So we can imagine, let's just say it's 3 pounds a minute of airflow per step. The 115 would be 44. The 128 would be 47. So your 128 on this one would probably match pretty closely to the 1.0 on this one. Simple enough, right? But efficiency, peak efficiency, at least for the turbine, is 4% down, which that's kind of your ability to both push the turbo and keeping things spinning, and also the effectiveness of getting heat out of the system. So you might even have lower EGTs on the smaller turbine, which is a really weird thing to think about, but I've personally seen it, so might as well mention it. And this ratio here. So let's say that we are running one of these previous numbers that I've mentioned, this 80 pounds a minute at this pressure ratio, and we're peaking out here at that 127. Well, let's take our big number. Let's just grab this real quick and make this really simple. So our big number is 27. We're going to divide that by our flow here of 54, 50, yeah, like 54. Okay. That gives us our compressor full flow to our turbine to full flow of 2.35. Okay. Same thing real quick on this. We were saying it's right here. Say like 70. Oh, I'm sorry, we need the big number. So the big number would be right about here. It's about 140 by overdriving the turbo. We'll just say 135. Will be nicer. 135. And then if we kept the same 128, we would be at 47. And that computes out to 2.87. Now, that means that you have 2.87 times the amount of airflow coming on the compressor side as you are on the turbine side for its peak flow. And if this engine had the biggest cams imaginable, or something that was extremely back pressure sensitive, which does not, then we could talk about, okay, then we would lower this ratio down to something like 2.4, 2.5. When we see that it is for this G45 on this one here, we're kind of really dulling the response of the engine and not getting anything out of it, because the G42 has better compressor flow and a better balance, in my opinion, what we're doing. Comparing this to rotary, again, a semi-peripheral port, extremely sensitive. It needs to have a lower number for this ratio. A street port can get away with 3.25 and be totally fine. But there is a sweet spot for a given engine and package, just the way that it's flowing. So, kind of want to give you guys a comparison here. All of this equates back down, and you can do this for each breakpoint of pressure ratio and kind of see where this thing's going to land. This is where boost control and being smart about how to read both turbo speed and compressor maps comes into play. And what I mean by that is, let's say that we have airflow here and we want to make our most optimized curve for this turbo. Well, this little trace through the center here would be the most optimized curve. So if you had a progressive boost curve that makes it start right here and continue upwards like this. So you start here, cracks off at 7 psi, starts becoming onto the map, and then we go up to 14 psi, and we're somehow managing to get 65 pounds a minute of air magically. If we were to build a boost curve along this, the turbo would be the most optimal. That's the bottom line. When you have a flat sure boost, that's like, let's say we had 14 psi. Well, that's just going to be going across this direction. Right? So you're going to have inefficiencies over here, inefficiencies over here, and it's less optimized. So the takeaway from this is that we're going to have to find a balance of making the turbo happy and making the engine happy. We really only have so much to work with. So you can command all the boosts you want, and you're going to end up your ass over here, and everything's going to be unhappy. Just complete inefficiency, hot, angry, upset turbo. It's just not what we want. And you can overdrive a turbo on this side of the map, and you're pumping hot air. We don't want that either. So really hope that helps you guys kind of visualize. I'm going to start bringing up more of these compressor to turbine ratio. I don't want to say ideas because they're proven. I've gone through this on a multitude of cars. But hopefully this helps you guys visualize the effectiveness of choosing certain turbos, why I do certain things, and definitely push these harder than most people realize. So don't count the G series out. It's pretty impressive. So in the next video, I'm probably going to go over. So I'll just leave it to that. Catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.